Welcome to this webinar on AI-driven supplier onboarding. It's great to have you all here. My name is Guus van der Mont, and I'll spend the next half hour talking about how you can use AI for onboarding supplier product data. A few housekeeping notes. If you have something to share, you can do so in the chat. And I don't always see the chat screen myself, but my colleagues will also be keeping an eye on it. So if you want to say something, just let us know. I'll make sure to address it at the end of the webinar. I'll share my screen now. All right, let me take you through the story we want to tell. Well, Guus van der Montes from Squadron Machine Learning Company here. We focus on applying data science and AI, especially for suppliers, wholesalers, and retailers. Within that, we specialize in what we call smart product data management. So everything around product data and AI commerce, making sure that products are easily findable and sellable. We started in 2017, even before the ZGPT hype, and now we're a team of just over 20 people. We began as a project club, looking into the challenges our clients face and how we can help with our knowledge and expertise. After some time, we started receiving similar questions. So we decided to develop a standard platform. This has become a SaaS solution, software as a service, called the Power Suite. I won't go too deep into it, but the things we'll show today can also be done with Power Suite, which I'll demonstrate. These are the clients we work for, spread out over those delivery sectors. The suppliers, the wholesalers, the retailers, and there are likely some familiar names on the retail side, but the onboarding issues we see are present among both wholesalers and retailers, as they also deal with suppliers who provide product data that needs processing. Now, if we look at the Power Suites we have, there are several modules that help to elevate product data quality by automatically classifying products or converting them to the correct category structures. But also by improving the product data itself, enriching it, generating text for it, and establishing product relations. We won't cover the last two today. I will show some elements from classification and improvement. The goal of all this is ultimately to save time, minimizing manual work, and of course to generate extra revenue. Well, let's take a look at what we'll be discussing further. Basically, a summary of the problems we encounter in practice around this topic. What exactly is AI-driven supplier onboarding? We'll include some examples too, so that it becomes a bit more practical. Finally, how could you apply this in practice? Well, to start with that problem, great, congratulations, you've implemented a new PIM system. Great data model underneath it, maybe a data standard like item or GS1, or maybe your own custom model. Perhaps you even have an onboarding portal so that suppliers can submit their data. And yes, what you actually expect is that you'll ask those suppliers to submit all their data, and that every supplier will of course do so via APIs, via smart sheets, via data pools, etc. Well, in practice, it seems a bit different because only a part of the suppliers is able to submit it in that way. And that means a part of the suppliers does not submit it in that way. So either they have their own format in which they submit their data, or it might be submitted in the right format, but it's incomplete, the quality isn't always good. And there are even suppliers who say, yeah, I can't really submit the data. We do have a website, so just look there. But yes, submitting it is not possible for us. It depends a bit on the sector you're in. Some sectors are more standardized. For example, in the world of do-it-yourself, in the world of food where GS1 is big, the technical installation sector, Ethem, the Netherlands is quite good. If you look abroad, it's a bit less. So I'm curious about your experiences as well. A quick recap, what types of suppliers do we have? Well, if we look at the first category is the suppliers who actually do well. So they submit the data automatically or in the correct formats, maybe not always completely, but quite well. Well, and another group of suppliers says, well, I do have structured data, but yeah, I've used my own vocabulary, I've used my own formats, so I can submit an Excel file with all our data, but you'll have to convert it into the format you want it in. Well, third group of suppliers says, well, maybe I have some structured data, but mainly unstructured data. So I have a textual description of my product, or I have a PDF with various details in it. Here you go, make use of it. And then the last category says, yeah, I don't even have data that I can submit. Just check our website. Well, as I said, I'm curious when looking at these different groups, what are your experiences? So I want to start a poll where you can, look, if all goes well, you'll see it now. So indicate how it is with us. Do you also have suppliers who do everything perfectly? Well, if that's the case, great day. Then maybe you don't need to follow this webinar any further. But if you also deal with the second, third, or fourth category, I'd like to know soon, in about 2 minutes, I can check what those results actually are. Because I'm very curious. We often see that things partly go well, but there's always about 5, 10, 20, 30% that doesn't deliver so well. And you have a lot of work with. Well, I see that most people here say, well, they do deliver the data, but partly in PDFs, texts, and images. So that's category 3, but also some who don't deliver anything. Well, that matches the picture I already had from our own experiences with clients. Okay, well, let's have a further look. How could AI help? I'll start with the toughest case. In this sense, our supplier has nothing at all. Well, in a way that might be easy because they do have a website and we can do a bit of intelligent web scraping to get that data off. Well, especially with the later tools, let's say, they've become a lot smarter. Previously, you had to do a lot of programming, as it were, to get all that data out. But nowadays, it's also possible with certain tools, so to speak, to generate a script that can then get that data off the website. Well, you always have scraping is a bit of a gray area, whether you can do it or not. Well, in this case, it's public data, product data. It's also in the supplier's interest. But we always say, let the supplier know that we're scraping the site, because then you also prevent potential issues. Some sites are better protected against scraping, so it's not always easy or even possible. It's always a bit of a cat and mouse game, so there's always a way to do it. But the suppliers who protect their own websites very well are probably mature in some way, so they likely have other ways to deliver their data. So this is more about suppliers who are generally smaller, maybe less mature, with less capacity. And that's how we can get that data off. Then we have that data in, for example, an Excel format, but that's not in the format you'd ideally want. So a conversion is still necessary. Well, then I'll take the second step where you say, okay, I can indeed convert that data to my own standard. And of course, we can also include those suppliers who can provide structured data, because we can immediately include them in the same conversion process. Well, with the use of AI, we can actually understand that these characteristics match the features of our standard, or these belong to our standard. So that way, we don't have to manually do all that mapping. We can automate the whole process. Well, maybe the data is not entirely complete and we're still missing some things, but at least it's a decent source. And we could say, let's also look at the information we've already structured and see if we can complement it from other sources, like, for example, a PDF document or a textual description, or maybe even the internet, which can also be a source. We can use that to enrich that data a bit further. So at that point, we have more complete data, and what we found can be included. Well, that's an excellent source to eventually hand over to your PIM system or load through the onboarding portal to the rest of the organization. And of course, suppliers who already had everything in order can also offer this data directly. So, and this way you have various tools you can use, perhaps one after the other, to ensure that every type of supplier with every type of data delivery can process it. Looking at the Power Suite, there are indeed several tools for that. We have Power Scrape for scraping websites, Power Class Convert for converting, and Power Improve for enriching the data. Let's take a look at how that works in practice. So here I have a site, a Power Scrape example. For instance, this is a site from a Belgian supplier with product data nicely organized on the site. However, they couldn't deliver this data to a wholesaler in this case. So what do we do when scraping? What do we focus on? We need to look at the language we want to extract. In this case, a Belgian site has Dutch, French, and also English content, so we need to know which content and language we are extracting. Well, maybe we don't want all products from the entire assortment. We might need to select specific categories and say, well, we want to extract these categories. As I mentioned with PowerScript, we can generate a script that will extract the data. Well, that's convenient because once I have a script, I can run it again. Let's say, for example, in a month or 3 months. If the site hasn't changed much, we can also grab the new or modified product data this way. So we no longer need to configure anything. We just need to run the script. Here's a quick example. I have a page from the Gesso website. They have lighting products and they have several tabs. Under the datasheet tab, you see the width, height, and all other information listed. There's also a downloads folder with a number of PDF documents, product sheets, and even a folder for related articles, which includes products that could serve as accessories or variants. Well, that's really valuable information. We can pull this kind of data off and export it in formats like this. It's kind of an Excel-like format where everything is structured in columns. Of course, we also account for the column titles. We can also pull off the images, PDFs, and related articles to ensure we have a complete data set. That's great because once we have this data, we have everything from the site, but it's not yet in the right format. That's the next step where we need to do some formatting. Then we come to the conversion step. I'll show you that. This conversion step consists of two main steps. The first is determining to which category the products belong, called the classification step. It's important to know the category of a product because once I know its category, I know the properties I ultimately want. For example, with a lighting product, I need good dimensions, but also the light intensity, wattage, etc. For a different product like a drill, I don't need light intensity, but rather things like RPM or whether it has a hammer function, etc. So the category or brick is quite decisive for what features I ultimately want, such characteristics. The first major step is classifying the products into the correct categories, making any necessary corrections, and then moving on to the next step. Then we know for all products in that category what the supplier characteristics, names, and values are. We know our target data model, and then we can make measurements to work well with it. Of course, there's an upload step and an export step involved. I'll show you what this looks like in practice. Here's our web-based solution. It's already configured for several data models. I can upload the data, either scrape results or something a supplier has provided. Well, this is the manual way. There are also options to automate it via API integration, but I'll show you the manual way for now. This is how I can upload. Then I want to point out what's exactly in my Excel in this case. I have a few columns: product ID, description, name, category. And I actually want to know what kind of fields these are. It is not the classification step yet. That's actually before that. So product ID is a product ID. And description is a description. Well, and the description, the name, and the category, those are descriptions. We'll tick all those as descriptions because that's the basis where we say, okay, then we're going to see if we can classify the product based on those descriptions. The rest, like width and height, those are indeed the features that we also want to map later on. So basically a bit of what is what in your Excel. Well, then the first real step begins, which is the classification step. And then I basically choose my data set. Well, I've just uploaded that, but I also choose my target data model. Now, depending on what the final agreements are, you can have multiple ones. Here's an example of the item data model. Now, per language, so English, Dutch, French, German, etc., there are all sorts of variants. But you could also have your own data model, or also the GSE data model, if the data is trained for that as well. Well, then a proposal is made per product of which class it belongs to. Well, in general, we also indicate with color what the class belongs to. Probability is, well, you see if I expand it, you also see a certain value. Well, for some, it will be very high and it's green, so you indeed don't need to look at it again. We expect that to be correct. For others, it will have a different color, and it means that you need to check it manually. Because as I said, it's quite important that the product is in the right category. Well, if any images are written, then that image will also be there. So you can actually see more easily, okay, these types of products should be in this category. Well, you can also sort everything neatly, so you can say, well, I want to start with those that are least well classified, those with the lowest percentage, so that I can review all of them. Now, at some point, I believe those that are well classified, I could actually skip them. Well, if it's not in this top 5 list, I can always do a manual override and say, well, it was actually another one. And the system learns from that too. So that input is important for the system's learning. Well, once I've done this, I have indeed allocated all the products into different classes, and then I can move on to the conversion step. I don't have to do it per product, but can do it per class. So in this case, I have, well, this product group here and all the products that are, in fact, in here, well, they all have the same kind of input characteristics. Well, and I can match them to my target model. In this case, item 9, where it says, well, that white is indeed that white here. Well, that's quite trivial, but there are also some less trivial things, like the thickness could also be a diameter, well, depending on my input data and the final model that I have. Well, same principle here. I can actually say that this link, this supplier feature, should be matched to the right side, where I can also choose, well, whatever the algorithm ranks highest. But yeah, maybe that width, in this case, maybe the length, well, I could adjust that this way too. I also see the example data. I can click it open. So I see which values are in it and how often they occur. And well, in this case, alphanumeric, we have alphanumeric values, then you can see everything that's in that data. Well, once I've made that mapping, I can indeed also say for the alphanumeric values, well, I also want to match those on the value level. So here I have a certain color, well, that's matched with a certain color. I can click through and then I actually get the different options I have here. This, by the way, is the material. That material I can also map again to the different values that apply to this characteristic. That does mean that for your data model, you need to have heroes in this category. We have these characteristics, and for the alphanumeric characteristics, well, these are actually the possible list of value values. And for the alphanumeric characteristics, well, these are actually the possible list of value values. Now, for the alphanumeric features, I would also like to have a unit of measure. And that's essentially the next step where I can say, suppose my input data is provided in kilograms or grams. I can convert that to kilograms or centimeters to millimeters, etc. that way. So by doing this, I am not just doing the mapping, but I am ensuring that the conversion happens correctly. Now, once I've done that, I am basically done, and I can export my output. Now, I have exported the output. This can be in different formats, in this case, Excel, but it could also be in the case of an item to BMECAT. We can configure it in various formats so that the output is delivered properly, allowing you to process it further. Now, further processing can indeed involve looking at external sources, PDF files, texts, internet. We can use the Power Improve application for that as well. Also, I have an upload step or direct forwarding from another application. I mainly look at whether I can find features from these alternative sources. Now, if I find them, great, I would like to review and approve them before actually using them. So there is a review process involved, and for that we have used AI and machine learning. The more I approve or reject something, the more the algorithm learns and becomes smarter. Now, to illustrate, this is the upload step. I can upload different files, Excel files, but also PDFs and images, for example. Next, the system starts processing and looks at what it can extract. Now, here I see an example of a piece of text, quite simple in this case. So I have a PVC cable, gray, 3G, 1 square millimeter. So you see that the tool is indeed capable of recognizing the number of conductors. That's the 3G, it recognizes that. The nominal section of the conductor is 1 and the color is gray, so I have that here as well. We are essentially looking ahead. So now, as you can see, you also get a certain confidence score here. So I can easily see how confident the algorithm is. And if I reject something, it comes back with a lower score for the next products. So eventually, I might not even see it anymore if I want. This way, the system can essentially advise me better and better. Now, this is a simple text example. Moving on, I have another example, also a piece of text. You see another piece of text here. But here we have also used a PDF. So I have an example of that PDF here as well. This is a PDF where multiple products are listed together in one table in this case. So you see that we have the number of polls, weighted current, and here also a PDF, weight per unit. They are all mentioned here. And in this case, also for the product we are talking about, you can see here the number matches, and then you indeed see that those values 4 and 16 and such are all recognized. So the number of polls in this case is 4, and the weighted current 16. Well, it just extracted that from that PDF. Well, if you already had data yourself, which is often also the case, and there is, for example, that number of polls in your data that you already had, for example, put a 2, well, it had indicated that here as well. Well, here you see, for example, that is a difference from what you had yourself. Well, that could indicate an error, like, no, that second one is not correct because I really see in that PDF that it is 4. But it could also be, of course, that there is an error in the source. Well, PDF could also contain an error. So in that way, you actually have an extra quality control step that you can do on your data. Well, this is a PDF. If I take another example still of an image, well, then you do indeed see a certain image. Well, it extracts a number of things. Not everything is equally relevant, but for example, the color of the outer jacket, that it is indeed black. Well, those are things you can obviously clearly see. Well, if there is also text on an image, we can process that too. Well, here you see, for example, such an MCD, which is in your meter box. Well, there are a number of texts on it. Eaton is written here. Well, that is a brand. It extracted that as well. Well, here you also see some things about that C20 DC. Well, it neatly recognized that DC. It also recognized that 20, but also just on the device itself that it has 2 poles. That is not actually written on it, but it neatly recognized that from that image. So we can extract this data from texts, images, and PDF files. Well, worth it. For certain technical products, that might be a bit trickier because some things are also a bit on the inside. So how many watts this can handle, you do not always see on the outside. So it depends a bit on the types of products as well. I have here another example indeed of a dress where indeed the color, the pattern, the sleeve length, the collar type, etc. Those are all things you can see in that photo. A person can see that too. And that means an algorithm in many cases can see that too. So yes, that can just save you time when enriching the data. Sometimes the supplier does not provide all these things. And yes, you might still want to have it on your website because then you can also create the right filters and offer the right choice to your customer. Well, those are all examples of enriching data. Well, in the end, you can also export that to different formats. Well, you undoubtedly know that. Well, how do we finally handle that? Well, you could, of course, say it is nice that we have these tools because then we can actually process that supplier data. Well, there are also a number of customers who do it that way too. Now, depending on those situational durations, whether or not to scrape those sites, or at least the conversion and also those improvements. But you could also say, you know what, that's actually work that I think the supplier should do. So depending on how your relationship is with the supplier, you could also say, you know what, I'll give you the tools, and then you can do the conversions yourself, do the checks, do the enrichment, because yeah, in the end, it's your data, it's your products. So that's also something you should do. At the moment, for example, we're also working for beoil.com. They also have suppliers, partners who don't always supply everything completely. And there it was said, let's also give tools to those partners so they can also see for themselves, like, okay, what can I improve on? What can I add to get their product data to a level where it can be sold? Well, and then you also have a choice, like, how are you going to handle that? Are you going to say, well, I see that as a service to our suppliers, partners, or are you going to say, hey, wait a minute, we will facilitate that for you. And if you, as the supplier, don't deliver it properly, fine, you can do it yourself, but we will charge you for it. Or if we do it, that's also possible, then we will charge you for it as well. So you can also, and this is a bit of that data monetization, as they call it, ensure that you generate extra income this way and create value from the fact that those suppliers still don't have their data in order. Yes, of course, it's a choice and you can think about it. And as I said, it also depends a bit on the relationship. Look, if you're very happy that the supplier wants to deliver to you, then you will want to do a bit more. If you're in a certain position and you say, yes, they should be glad they can supply through us, then you'll have a different relationship with the suppliers, which might make it easier to enforce these things. Okay. Let's see, I had another poll. By the way, it still has the results of the previous one to show. But we also have the next poll, and it's about, yeah, what do you guys think of this method of AI onboarding? I can imagine you might say, well, great idea, the sooner the better. On the other hand, you might say, I just don't see it working that way. I'm just curious about your opinion. So if all goes well, you can now give your opinion on that. Well, we notice ourselves, these are things that weren't all possible until recently with the advancement of technology. So you actually see that only in recent years, AI has become smart enough to do these kinds of things. Yes, and we ourselves have had very positive experiences with a number of our customers for this. But anyway, it's sometimes also a bit more of a traditional world, so I'm curious to know your opinion on that. I see there's a bit of a mixed picture. It ranges from great idea to, well, most people think it's the second best, nice idea. We're going to see if we can try other things. Keep me posted. Well, it's fine. There are only a few who say, or even just one, who don't see it working for us so far. So let's see. The half hour is almost up, so there's still some room for questions. So I'll also check the chat. If there's also an English version, we do plan to hold an English session in the future because we had some questions earlier about whether this would be in English. This one is indeed in Dutch. So for now, we'll, for today, it covers English well, but the voiceover is, of course, in Dutch. Further questions, I see also internal ones. Those I don't need to address here. Well, we're actually right on time again because it's almost 11:30. I want to thank you all very much for attending. If you have any more questions, I have given you my contact details. Get in touch via email or give me a call. We'd love to think along with you and see if we can possibly help you. Thank you, and I hope to see you again at the next webinar. Thanks.